Welcome to episode 13. I'm doing a solo podcast today. I'm just going to cover some things that have come up in my life since I last did one of these, and I have a few different topics I want to cover today. But first, I just want to say, especially if you know me, if you're one of my friends, maybe family, whatever it might be, can you just hit follow or subscribe on the podcast, whichever platform it is that you use? If it's YouTube, hit subscribe. If it's Spotify, hit follow on the page. If it's Apple Podcasts, I haven't used it in a while. I forget what it might say, but whichever one it is on that platform, if you do that for me, that would be great. It will just help me build up my following over time. Obviously, my expectations are very low at the beginning, but it's a start. I launched an episode last week with my brother. It was just honestly more so me testing technology. I have a microphone that I use that syncs to my camera that I record on. I filmed my first episodes with only the one mic, and I wanted to try it out to see what an in-person conversation would be like when I'm recording the other person's audio on their own microphone, and then I have to go sync it in post-production. So we essentially cover some things about stand-up comedy. My brother's a comedian. He has a big gig coming up on Saturday. He is, well, first of all, on internet, one of the things he's known for in his content is impersonating Bret Hart. My brother's always been the best impressionist that I ever know. And some wrestlers and so forth have been liking his impersonations. They're pretty funny. And Bret Hart's bar in Calgary, I guess, came across him, and he has his birthday dinner fundraiser on Saturday at his bar, and my brother's, anyway, flying out to Calgary to do that gig. So we covered that as well. I'll have him on again after the fact and ask him what it was all about. I have some other guests lined up. I am going to have to do a mix of in person, which I always prefer, but also over video call. I have to test out some software because there's specific software that you use for video calls for podcasts and everything. So I should have that starting to get fired up this week. I'm honestly very excited to take this on. I know it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of reps, a lot of episodes before anyone starts to pay attention or give a shit. And I'm okay with that. Honestly, I find it fun doing all this stuff. So that makes it much easier when you enjoy it. I was listening to Rich Roll's 1000th podcast episode just a few hours ago. And I just wanted to touch, well, on a couple things. One, he talks about how he started in a warehouse on the North Shore of Kauai, and he doesn't live there anymore. But it was just more so how he started his podcast thinking no one would ever listen. And here he is 1,000 episodes in, and he has certainly built up a great following for himself. And I look at that as inspiration for my own podcast. But one thing that he discussed is how if you were to start now, just how many more podcasts there are, how much more of a competition it is to get people's attention. And some people will say the podcast market is saturated, which I don't necessarily disagree. But from all of the content creators that I followed, honestly, saturation's kind of bullshit. It's still competition. To me, it just means I got to figure out how to get better. I got to figure out how I can make people want to listen to my podcast over spending their time doing something else, whether it's another podcast, music, whatever that is. So I know it's going to take me a lot of reps to get to that point. I just wanted to throw it out there that that is something that I've heard in terms of getting started, and I acknowledge that. However, I think that quality beats any sort of saturation worries. So we'll see what happens. The last solo episode I did, I mentioned how it might take 8 weeks for a hot tub part. Well, later on I ended up hearing it was going to be 4 to 6 from the lady that works for the company that does the servicing. And then anyway, it's fixed. It only took a week. How we went from 8 weeks down to 4 to 6 down to 1 is beyond me, but all I care is that it's fixed, and now I have my full morning routine back. So I just wanted to touch on that. I just also wanted to fire off a couple recommendations with some pods that I've listened to since my last solo episode. And I think that maybe by sharing some of my recommendations to other podcasts, that people might start to understand where I get my inspiration and my interest from. The Mel Robbins podcast, she had Oz Perlman on, who's a mentalist, very famous mentalist. And he'll outright tell you he can't read minds, he can't do magic, but he can figure out how people think, behave, and get them to think a certain way. Anyhow, he also, in that episode, it was July 7th, he discusses a lot of different tips that he uses. For example, doing all sorts of events, trying to remember people's names, just little things that can help make you get a better connection with other people. I found that very interesting. I think that's worth a listen. And the other one that I found noteworthy was from Cody Sanchez's Big Deal podcast. So if you don't know who she is, she likes to talk about business and buying businesses. She used to work on Wall Street and now has started her own company and so forth. But she did an episode, I think it was about 20 minutes, where she talks about how to talk to the 1%. And it's not just literally talking in conversation, but it's also just, I guess, proper behavior per se, you could say. Maybe what in terms of what's socially acceptable in terms of higher net worth circles and things like that. And honestly, it just kind of helped me understand from a mindset perspective how I maybe need to change certain either behaviors or ways I think or ways that I talk to people, and it will enable me to better understand how to get, I guess, into the better rooms of conversation. So I thought that was a very helpful one to listen to, which you may find of interest. This week, or rather last week, I helped some people sell a house. So again, if you don't know, I'm a lawyer. I started my own law practice. We're coming up on 2.5 years, I guess you could say, ago. And anyhow, I was helping some clients sell their house. They had a mortgage on the house. So when I act for a seller, I have to make sure that the mortgage gets paid off. So I actually have to facilitate the money going from one place to the next. And this was a bank that I had not worked with before on a discharge. So usually when you pay off mortgages, you can do it two ways depending on the bank. You can wire the money, which I love because it's way easier. But then some banks, they make you actually go in and pay it, and it always has to be done by certified check or I guess bank draft, either or. And anyhow, the mortgage product my clients had was partly a mortgage and partly a home equity line of credit. So when you get a payout statement, it gave me the lump sum for both, and then it also gave it to me broken down for each product. So I called the bank's mortgage department. I said, it's closing day. Do you want one check to cover the lump sum as the big amount says, or do you want it two different ones? They tell me do one, they'll figure it out at the branch. Well, sure enough, I go to the branch and there's all this confusion in terms of how do we apply one lump sum to two different products. And the branch manager is great, but I did make it known to her. I said, look, I did call before I came here today with this. And I remember we ended up getting it sorted out, and it took about an extra 20 minutes of my time, which isn't the end of the world considering that I have easily spent 45 minutes, an hour plus at banks before while they figure things out. So it does get frustrating, but I learned that sometimes you just have to be patient. So whenever I find myself in these situations where it's like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be doing this right now, I just remind myself, look, just be patient, give it 20 minutes, whatever, you'll be on with your day. Sometimes you have to learn how to find patience within yourself, as frustrating as it is, because I specifically called and asked what to do. And then sure enough, you get to the bank, you get a different answer. Doing real estate transactions, I can't tell you how many times I have gotten completely conflicting answers from people that work at a bank. Many banks, I'm not just picking on one. On Saturday, I attended a wedding. It was two friends that met in law school. It was a great wedding. We had a great time. I just want to throw out some reflections because I actually hadn't been to a wedding in about 7 years. So, number one, it was my first time wearing a suit in over 3 years. I have not worn a suit, and again, I'm a lawyer. I have not worn a suit since I was a student working at a law firm a little over 3 years ago. So that was a milestone. Now, we did the ceremony at this church. There was, of course, no air conditioning. I was told to bring a portable fan, which I went to the dollar store. I found one. I brought one. It actually ended up being not that bad temperature-wise in there. But the one thing I found funny was, so they had, and I'm not religious, so I don't understand a lot of these things, but I think it was a priest at the front of the room that does the ceremony. If it's not, if I'm using the wrong term, so be it. But the point was they had a man up there running the ceremony, and he did have a microphone and there was a speaker system, but I honestly couldn't hear or understand what he was saying. And even when the bride and groom went up to the front and they had a microphone there, I still couldn't hear them. So unfortunately, even though I sat there for about an hour, and although I could figure out kind of what was going on, I couldn't really hear what was going on. So it's just, you're in a church and the echo, and it was just too many things. But we had a great time. The reception later was a lot of fun. Quite the elaborate setup. It was nice because I got to see some people that I hadn't seen, I guess, since law school or right about then. And good food, which is always a toss-up when you do these big events. You never know how the food's going to be. You never know if it's going to be enough food. So that was great. And I remember when the bride and groom, when they walked in, when they were doing the announcements and everything, when they're starting the whole shebang, whatever it's called, reception, and they had these sparkle things shoot out. It almost was like Goldberg making his entrance to the ring. If you're a wrestling fan, you might know what I'm talking about. To finish this segment off, and again, I'm more so doing these solo episodes as practice. I urge you, especially, again, if you're one of my friends, like, just tell me what you want me to talk about. Give me some suggestions. Give me some ideas of people to have on that you might find interesting. Today I'm doing day 36 of my 100-day public speaking challenge. I need to shoot that shortly after actually I do this video. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about yet. Sometimes it's a little tough coming up with topics, but I just wanted to touch on 4 videos that I've made in the last week. If you follow me on social media, if you've been watching my videos, you've already heard me talk about these things. If not, then here's another place you can maybe find them. So just a few different thoughts or things that have come up that I just like to put out into the ether. I have found that living a life with no expectations is honestly the best way to go. Anytime that I've been disappointed or let down or whatever word or phrase you want to use in life, it's because, and maybe without even knowing it, I subconsciously went into some sort of situation where I was expecting some sort of result or some sort of help or whatever it might be. And when you go into a situation or a friendship or whatever it is, and you just take it for what it is, you just say, hey, maybe this is it, or maybe it's just doing something nice for someone and not expecting anything in return. Life just becomes so much more joyful. It's when you subconsciously build up these expectations in your head about what something might be or become. And then it's that disappointment when you realize reality. That's when it sucks. So I urge you to maybe just lower your expectations and just find how much less you get disappointed on a daily basis. Another thing that I did a video about was how sometimes, especially as an entrepreneur being completely in control of my own schedule, sometimes I find that I can get guilty or anxious when I take a break. And I made a video about how it's okay to take a break. You need to let your creativity or whatever it is breathe. And then just yesterday, on Sunday, I found myself going in the same trap, because on Sunday, I specifically didn't make any firm plans because of my air conditioner just turned on there, so I turned it off. I specifically didn't make any plans on Sunday because I knew I had the wedding Saturday night and I didn't know what Sunday was going to be like. And so I left Sunday open, and so I do my usual morning routine. I do my exercise, and then I have a nap, and then I wake up, and then I have lunch, and then it's like, oh my God, it's noon, it's Sunday, it's a beautiful day. I don't have any plans. And I started to get a little anxious to be like, okay, what should I do the rest of the day? Like, should I do work? Should I try to socialize? And sometimes I just get in my own head, and I realize that it's like, man, sometimes you just got to go with the flow. Like, you don't always have to have everything mapped out. It's okay to have a little bit of uncertainty. And I had lunch with a lawyer that I used to work with at one of the old firms, the firm I used to work at. And it's funny because this person asked me what type of law I did. And it's funny because I have this person on Instagram personally and LinkedIn. So I know I have them on platforms where I talk about I'm an estates lawyer, I'm a real estate lawyer, whatever else it is that I do. And I thought to myself, geez, how does this person not know this? So I realized that doing more volume is the answer regardless. And here's why. Because the fact that this person doesn't know or didn't know what I did tells me one of two things. Either one, I'm not posting enough and they just don't see my stuff. Or number two, which to be honest with you, I think is probably more so the answer, I'm not doing a good enough job captivating people's attention to my business posts for them to know what I do. And whichever of the two it is, the answer is more volume. I'm either going to get my message out there more and people are going to see it, or I'm going to figure out how to do it better by experimenting and trying new things. I post client testimonials with their permission, of course. And what I've realized is before I was just using the same template every time because I thought, oh, it's just the substance of the message. It doesn't really matter, which is partially true. But I then realized that someone might just be used to seeing the same looking thing every time, and it may just cause them not to read it. So by changing up the format, it might prompt someone to read it that normally may not have. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on is I made a video about how having a creative hobby, I think, is a must. It doesn't matter what it is. For me, it's guitar, I guess doing content too, but it could be painting, it could be whatever it is. But what I love, at least about guitar specifically, is when I'm playing guitar, that's the only thing I can think about. So anything else that's going on that might be bothering me, I can't think about it, because if I do, I'm gonna screw up the song. And I get so focused when I play guitar that it forces me to block all these things out. So if you don't have a creative hobby and you maybe find that you're getting anxious in the evenings or whatever, go find a creative hobby and make it something that you can be better at. Because to me, that's what keeps me going with guitar, because you can never stop getting better. And of course you have to play a lot or draw a lot or whatever it is you're doing to get amazing. But I find it as an amazing outlet for me. I don't watch much Netflix anymore. If I do, it's usually something where I'm learning, and I do watch some stand-up and stuff on occasion, but the point is I don't watch TV nearly as much as I used to. And I don't watch live sports nearly as much as I used to, because in the evenings now, if I'm at home and it's just a relaxing kind of night, for the most part, I'm playing guitar. So I find that it's interesting how your interests can change. So that's it for this episode. I will see you in the next one. The next one may be me with a guest. It could be me solo. Right now, I find I've been doing these solo ones about every 6 days. I think that it's going to change once I start doing ones with guests, because that's more so what I want to do. But I'm going to try to up the frequency of these. Maybe instead of doing, we'll call it one a week, maybe trying to do twice a week. I don't know. I may just not follow that. But maybe shorter. So we'll see what happens. So thank you again for listening. I appreciate your attention as always. Please subscribe or follow if you have not already. It certainly does help in terms of getting things going, but I'm excited to keep doing these. If you have any comments, suggestions, feedback, whatever, please send it to me however you get a hold of me. I'd appreciate that. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next episode.